Sports conversation with James Navalance on the Believe Network. As it's February 1st here, we're entering the stretch run of the college basketball season. So for this week, we're just going to do a deep dive on kind of the landscape of the college basketball season. 28 days away from, in my opinion, the best month of the year, that being March. Nothing better than that. Conference tournament time, NCAA tournament time, and this year especially, it's going to be so wide open. I was saying to our last guest, Joe Tulio, that this is going to be a wide open season. UConn ish, Shabazz Napier, 2014, a 7-8 seed Kentucky playing in the title game. It has that type of vibe. No real dominant team, very up and down across the board. No sensational freshmen. Of course, we have some here and there, Brandon Miller, Keontae George, but a little bit underwhelming in that component as well. There's no NBA four shot, automatic number one pick. Everyone's glued their eyes to. There's not this dominant team that's just, has, the landscape of college basketball on its ears. Like, no, like if there is a team, it's Purdue, and Purdue under Matt Painter in this transfer portal type era where it's, constant change of rosters, lack of continuity, and of course they have transfers as well. But I would say his program is as almost traditional as, all these other teams. Kind of, there's constant change. There's a steadiness to the program at Purdue. There's a cleanness to the program at Purdue, and if there is a dominant team, I guess we have to start with them, being that they only have one loss on the year, that coming to Rutgers and Steve Peichel, and they've done a phenomenal job. This season, they're trying to get him a lifetime contract, and they're going to be heading back to the NCAA tournament. He's done a phenomenal job there. But for Purdue, they had the clear foreshire, no doubt about it. Zach Edey, Player of the Year. He's pretty much hands down going to win the award. And then you have under the radar freshmen. Yeah, there's no maybe star freshman, at a frequency that we're accustomed to, but two under the radar guys in Braden Smith and, his steadiness that he brings to Purdue at the point guard position, doesn't overwhelm you with anything, just brings great steadiness, has the ability to get to the rim, great quickness. His shot making is good, not, elite, but great steadiness. One of the best, I would say one of the best, at least he's a top 10 point guard in the country. And then you have a guy in Foster Lawyer on the wing. Again, nothing athletically to write home about, but a bucket getter, shot maker, a consistent player, makes good decisions, and they have depth. They're able to go to their bench, playing, multiple guys around Zach Edey on the front court, and then having, the backcourt depth with like a guy like David Jenkins, who's kind of finding his own a little bit. Obviously, he had great success in previous stops, and now he's kind of at Purdue here, kind of finding his way. But Purdue's got it rolling. I would say it would be a very big surprise if they don't want to be in the number one overall seed once we get to Selection Sunday. But as I was saying at the start of this thing is wide open. A team like Purdue, honestly, is just going to keep teams within games. I don't think they're a team that's necessarily going to be blowing out opponents, and that doesn't mean they're not great. It's just kind of their style of play. They're inside oriented, inside out, as much as any team in the country. And Matt Painter's got, this is a great opportunity for him. He's had a really successful run at Purdue. Obviously, his best team was the Ryan Klein, Carson Edwards run, where they fell short against Virginia in overtime in the Elite Eight. This team's probably better, just more well-rounded. Obviously, still having the star power and a guy like Zach Edey. So we'll see if he can get over. Obviously, a coach is, a Final Four, like that is a significant hurdle, and guys have fallen short. Sean Miller has gotten knocked on that door a couple of times, fallen short. Obviously, Tony Bennett was knocking on that door, and then eventually got all the way through to win a national championship. Matt Painter's kind of been that guy who's kind of been really consistent, knocked on the door once at the Elite Eight, but always has good, solid teams. We'll see if they can get it done, but they're going to be the prohibitive favorite when we get to NCAA tournament time. Now it's probably, I would say, the other two teams that are kind of right on the next tier down from Purdue would be the two teams in the SEC, Tennessee and Alabama, and they're both really impressive for really two different reasons. Alabama, not that Alabama is not great offensively, or that Tennessee or defensively, and then Tennessee is not great offensively, but Alabama's offense is probably the most explosive in the country, and that's why I would say there's a greater variance with Purdue. I would say Alabama probably has a higher ceiling than Purdue just on a given day. If Nate Oates has that offense flying, Brandon Miller, he's a matchup problem. He could easily go for 25, 30 on a given night. And then they got players around him, Spears, and Quinn always hasn't even gotten to his own yet. They have a bunch of guys that can space the floor, get out in transition, and they have a lot of length and athleticism where they can mix it up defensively. I would say, for Alabama, it's going to be can they provide great consistency on the offensive end. Obviously, you saw the game against Oklahoma where they kind of struggled offensively, and then defensively, then Grant Sherfield just kind of took them apart, going for 30 in that game. Can they maintain a level of consistency? I think that will be key for them tournament time, because they're a team, they can wind up being in the national championship game and win this whole thing, but they're also a team that by Sweet 16, they're already out of this tournament, getting upset in around 32. So I think they have a little bit of a greater variance than a lot of these other top teams. As for Tennessee, their foundation really is defensively and being tough-minded, but I wouldn't say, who identifies that for Tennessee is Zakai Zeigler. As tough as they come, I would say he's my favorite point guard in the country. I wouldn't say, it's probably fair to say he's the best point guard in the country, but if I want one dude on my team on a given day, I would definitely want Zeigler to be my guy. He gets after it defensively, great on the ball, great competitive grit. And then offensively, he gets into his own. He does not force things. He's a good distributor, able to penetrate and be able to find others. And being kind of undersized, he uses his great body control and is able to manipulate his body to be able to get to the rim and finish with consistency. And then his shooting, it's consistent, not necessarily a knockdown shooter, but he's a guy who's consistent, and they depend on him, I would say, at a higher level. And you have a guy like Vescovi who's turned himself into a big shot maker for Tennessee. His front line for Tennessee is no joke either. Rick Barnes, obviously, this tremendous run at all these different schools across the country, but this feels like his best team at Tennessee. Obviously, they had a really good team with Amir Schofield, Grant Williams, but this feels like a little bit of a higher end Tennessee team. So I would say, coming in the SEC, Tennessee, Alabama, those are for sure the two best teams within the conference. And we'll see which one of them can ultimately win the regular season and, probably be the favorite to go on to win the SEC tournament. As for the best conference in college basketball, and it honestly has been ever since the ACC, I would say the ACC the last 3 years has been down. Ever since, the last 5 or so years, the Big 12's kind of taken over, and it's kind of been a slow build for them to be recognized as, the best conference, in college basketball. Obviously, the Big 10 is really consistent, and, for the last couple of years, they've been argued as the best team, the best conference in college basketball. But ultimately, they've fallen short in the NCAA tournament, haven't won since 2000. And, obviously they have Purdue here, who's going to be the number one overall seed more than likely come tournament time. But the last two national champions have, resided from the Big 12. And, if we're going back 3 years, Texas Tech was in the national championship game. Then we have Baylor win the national championship in 2021. And then last year we have Kansas. So, they represented it on a regular season basis. And then they most importantly have represented it in a tournament basis. But really, people can argue who's the top of the conference. To me, it's Kansas. You have the steadiness of Bill Self. Jalen Wilson's a first-team All-American. He's, with Ochai Agbaji, exiting, he's kind of taking that mantle of being the go-to guy for that team. He's been tremendous. Grady Dick, one of the best freshmen in the country. He's a go-getter. He's a bucket getter. Really kind of replacing that Christian Brown productivity for them. And then you have guys like, I know they're under, it's Kansas, so it's not like, oh, they don't have players and nobody's saying that. But two guys that are just underrated on a national level, Juwan Harris does a great job at facilitating at the point guard position. Really good consistency, good defense, just a really good table setter for that offense. And then KJ Adams, Kansas traditionally has good, solid bigs. He's undersized, but it allows them to play with a little bit more space and fluidity on the offensive end, and his short roll ability to make that extra pass, ability get rolls to the rim, and just be really active, having a high motor. KJ Adams has been really effective and efficient for Kansas. So Kansas, I would lean towards them being the best team within that conference. Just the consistency of Bill Self, and honestly, their overall roster had the best player. As for Kansas State, they obviously played last night. Kansas took them out on their home floor. Jerome Tang, I would say clearly is deserving of National Coach of the Year. No one anticipated this type of a surgence from Kansas State. Everyone, obviously he had a great track record at Baylor under Scott Drew. But this is very similar to what Tommy Lloyd did. I would say it's not equivalent, but again, a long-term assistant gets a Power 5 job and immediately turns it up. Arizona had more talent, let's be honest, a little bit higher level with Sean Miller. It's Arizona as well, not Kansas State, but he's done a tremendous job at Kansas State. Keontae Johnson's probably the best story in college basketball, coming back for what he came from at Florida. He's been tremendous. Definitely first team all Big 12, and same thing with the guard play and Marquise Noel. We coming into the college basketball season, kind of the point guards were, there wasn't necessarily your Colin Gillespie's of the world, your Cassius Winston, not, your Jalen Brunsons that what we've kind of gotten accustomed to. There wasn't really that dominant point guard. I wouldn't say maybe he's the best point guard in the country, but he's definitely one of them. He's been tremendous. Again, being a great table setter for this team, getting guys involved, getting his when he knows he's got to get his. No, he's been tremendous for Kansas State, and they have Kansas State, in a position, let's be fair, like they'll be a 2-3 seed come tournament time, and depending on the bracket, this Big 12 can definitely get, is capable of getting a team or two to a Final Four. There's no question about that. I'm going to go to TCU because I actually think TCU I think they might have the highest ceiling out of all these teams. And, Mike Miles Jr. goes down, hyperextends his knee. So obviously the extent of him being their best player is a massive concern, but he seems to be all right. He should be back for them. Chuck O'Bannon has the ability to make big shots. I just feel like, Jamie Dixon obviously had a tremendous run at Pitt, had really good teams. DeJuan Blair, getting the 1 seed. They wound up getting upset by Butler in 2011, but obviously did a really good job at Pitt, and now he's back, at his alma mater and TCU. This, hey, maybe it's just TCU's year. They go to the national championship in football. Maybe they have a Elite Eight, Final Four type run in them. Obviously, we saw what they did in the tournament last year, scaring the lights out of Arizona and almost taking them out. Eddie Lampkin just came back from his injury. So yeah, if they can get fully healthy, get Lampkin, Miles Jr. back, Damian Ball, a big shot maker as well. I believe they have enough pieces to make a run. And could wind up, when we look at the end of this year, they could. I believe they have the highest ceiling and could be the best team in the Big 12 when it's all said and done. TJ Olselberger done a phenomenal job at Iowa State. Loses Tyrese Hunter, doesn't matter. They keep it rolling. Obviously, they had the collapse Monday night against Texas Tech, but they've done a tremendous job. They're an old veteran team. Gabe Kasser having that shooting ability. There's a good, solid team, and we'll see Lipsy at the point guard position. A little bit of growth, but he's a good freshman guard. He's going to continue to get better, as the season continues to go on. But you lose a guy like Tyrese Hunter, and to have the ability to kind of sustain. Obviously, we saw Fred Hoiberg's success at Iowa State. Olterberger has kind of maintained that level, and they're really good on the defensive end. All vets. They're capable of making a tournament run. I don't know if their ceiling's exactly as high as these other teams within the conference, but we're definitely a tournament team, and wouldn't be surprised if they get, have a Sweet 16 type caliber run in them. As for a team like kind of now, we have this variance in the Big 12 where it's like, man, every night you're going against guys. I would say, Oklahoma State, West Virginia, those two teams, Texas Tech, just the way they've played. I would say they're probably on the outside looking in. I would say the team that's kind of on the fringe of making it, not making it. It's definitely Oklahoma and Porter Moser. We know his success at Loyola Chicago. He's done a really good job, kind of being ready for the big moment, the big games, and they've struggled in the Big 12. They're gonna need it, and what the greatness of the Big 12, like every single night's an opportunity. Obviously, every single night you can also lose though. So they're gonna have the opportunity to get those quad one wins. Getting Alabama that win, and not just a win, a beatdown. And Grant Sherfield playing at an extremely high level. My guy Grant there at Oklahoma, his ability to score the basketball, he's gonna have to be their lead catalyst. Groves had to get going for them as well, but they're definitely capable of, sneaking in, becoming that bubble team. Maybe they make a run in the Big 12 tournament, get enough wins, and become a tournament team. I would say their trajectory is probably obviously coming off the Alabama win. Looking up Baylor, I didn't touch on Baylor. I'll touch on Baylor real quick. Their guard play as a collective is probably the best in the country. LJ Cryer, Keontae George, Adam Flagler, just the shot making, the scoring ability. Keontae George. I feel like this team has the makeup to make a deep tournament run. Obviously the tournament's all about matchups, but their guard play is as good as anybody. You would not want to play, and especially a guy like Keontae George has kind of a little this moxie, and the game has the ability to take over. Everyday John could be on his way back. That could add to their front court. That would be a big addition for them, but their guard play is as good as anybody, and we know when we get in March, if you have terrific guard play, shot making ability, you're going to make a big run. So I would expect Baylor to be, steadily in the mix there. Pivoting out west, it's a 2-horse race, and honestly, like, it's probably going to be for a really long time in the Pac-12 until obviously UCLA, enters Big Ten play coming here, but Arizona, UCLA, they're running this league. Arizona, I would say aesthetically, for me at least, especially like they're a team that it's like, all right, like they can win the whole thing. Offensively, Tommy Lloyd does a terrific job with the guard play. Kirk Kriisa, there's an edge, there's a swagger to him, big shot making ability. And the bigs, like, they do a great job of feeding their bigs in positions where it's very easy for them to operate. Ballo might be I would say he's one of the most improved players in the country. He transferred from Gonzaga, second year at Arizona. Tommy Lloyd brought him over. And that goes to, kind of the player development component as well at Arizona. Their guys get better there. And Tubelis, one of the best, I would say, 20 players in the country. They're just really good I do worry about them maybe defensively here and there. I would say, being how a high end, similar to Alabama, very high end on the offensive end. If they have an off night, can they get enough stops? When it comes down to this grittiness of the NCAA tournament, and hey, like things aren't going your way, you got to find a way to win a game and kind of get past a team. UCLA, as tough as they come. Mick Cronin, he has a defensive identity. I think that's showing more as this time's going on at UCLA. Their Final Four run was offensively driven. Johnny Chuzang, Jaime Jaquez, but similar, mainstays there. Jaime Jaquez, definitely a top 10 player in the country. I don't think there's a question about what he can do on the offensive end. Tiger Campbell, one of the steadiest point guards in the country, has improved his offense year in, year out. You have shot making ability in David Singleton. That is huge come tournament time. Just a guy that that can make shots for them. Bona in the front court, I like his development. He's probably a year and a half away from really becoming a dominant force for UCLA. But as the year continues, he's going to continue to improve. Amari Bailey, he's got to continue to take steps in his game as well. But having that high end talent, as the season goes on, like they have the ability to pop. So UCLA heavily in the mix here. Arizona, one of these two teams going to win the Pac-12. Oregon's usually in this mix, but down year for Dana Altman at Oregon. Arizona, UCLA, in my opinion. I would say, as I was saying before we even, at the very beginning of this, any team can win a national championship. Not any team, but a 7-8 seed. I will not. Again, I won't be stunned if North Carolina does exactly what they did last year. Would not be surprising at all, that guard play or Marno Bacot. So a team like that definitely can make a run and win this whole entire thing. So Arizona, UCLA, I would say they're formidable teams that can ultimately win this whole thing, come Houston. A couple more things here. Big East. Big East has been interesting. Down playing, Villanova. All right, so Villanova's down, kind of under the radar then. All right, it's like, who's going to step up? Creighton's, as they start the season really strong, Kalkbrenner gets hurt. They go in a dip. They're starting their trajectory. They just beat Xavier by 17 on their home floor. Their trajectory is up. But Marquette, Shaka Smart, kind of in his place, kind of in his groove, kind of, more or less comfortability like a VCU place rather than what he was at Texas, in his home state in Wisconsin. Offensively, they're top 5 offense in college basketball. Tyler Colquitt, his guard play, one of the leading assist guys in the country. They have a flowing, versatile big men who can step out and shoot, take guys off the dribble at the high post area. They're just versatile, very good on the offensive end. They can win the league. Providence, Ed Cooley, the job he does on a consistent basis probably doesn't get enough recognition. Obviously, last year they win all these close games. Everyone's saying they're lucky, they're this, they're that. No, he's just got a really good program and really good consistency. And Jared Bynum was out, and they're still managing to win games. Now they get him back. Ed Cooley, NCAA tournament team every year. You can count on that, and maybe some years it'll be more high end, like these last couple where it's 4 or 5 seed, but they're definitely a consistent NCAA tournament team. Obviously, I feel like these jobs every single year that come open. Ed Cooley's a name that constantly gets brought up. Obviously, got a home in Providence, done a very good job. Providence probably doesn't leave, but we'll see what happens with Georgetown. Other places that could, become open, Notre Dame, whatever. But Providence, has got it rolling yet again. Xavier, Sean Miller, year 1. Zach Freeman will just get hurt. That's a big loss for them. In the interior, obviously having Jack Nungy inside helps. Colby Jones has turned himself into a really good player. There's again juggernaut offensively. I would say they're similar to Marquette. Sean Miller back at Xavier, finding his groove. They're a tournament team, and they're a team that's only going to continue to kind of make their mark in the Big East as years go on. Lastly, here for the Big East, though, UConn. Obviously, they start tremendous in the non-conference, and they have nothing but struggled in conference play. Adama Sanogo, he's got to be their focal point. Their guard, their guard play is not necessarily elite. Hawkins can make big time shots, he's a big time shot maker, but their overall guard play is not there. They had the front court depth. I would say that's kind of the missing link for UConn. Obviously, as we traditionally have seen the guard play, over the last 2 national championships for, UConn, Kemba, Shabazz, like guard play has been apparent, and I feel like that's what's kind of holding them back from being, what they were perceived to be, kind of in the beginning of the year as they were getting a roll, and it's just the overall guard play. Lastly, here, a team that, let's just say, I think it's perfect kind of segue to end this. Purdue, very consistent program, right? Virginia, very much in that same mold. Tony Bennett just wins. A couple of years, COVID, struggle, recruiting and that kind of stuff. Maybe didn't go as smooth as well, but they're back. They're not gonna blow anybody away. They're gonna play the pack line. They're gonna hedge better than any team in the country. Like, they're just gonna do what they do. And the ACC is way down. I mean, way down. North Carolina, Duke, Florida State, Miami. Like, it is bad. Syracuse, like, it is bad across the board. So I understand them going under the radar. It's not, 2017, 2018, 2019 where this league is rolling. But you have a guy like K.A. Clark, Bruce Beekman, Amar Franklin, that guard play, that foundation has been really steady for them. And it's going to be real key for them come tournament time. Their defense, Jaden Gardner in the front court, they're just really solid. And are they high-end national championship good? No, because I don't believe there's the Kyle Guy, Ty Jerome, DeAndre Hunter combination on this team. I just don't think they're on that level of a team. But Tony Bennett's going to be, maybe they sneak up to a 1 seed. I would say maybe not because of the overall resume, but they'll be a 2 seed. Be in the Sweet 16, compete Virginia back in the Elite Eight, kind of doing what they do. But they're running away. Obviously, Clemson's done a very good job in the ACC, so I don't want to discredit them. They lost to Boston College last night, though, so I think we kind of understand there's a ceiling there with Clemson. But Virginia kind of probably ultimately be the best team in the ACC. I expect them to win the regular season. I would say Miami has a second most potential. I would say them, Miami, North Carolina, they have potential to kind of get hot. Duke's playing way better as well. John Shire, year one, hasn't necessarily gone as, high end, but let's be honest, what are they, 17-5? Like, all right, like it's a down year one. But, I expect John Shire to get this thing, rolling in Durham. And, before we know it, like, year and a half, 2 years, like, there'll be a 1 seed in the tournament. Like, he's going to get that thing rolling yet again in Duke. But that's it. We're going to roll here. This is Sports Conversation with James Navlins on the Believe Network. Coming next week, it's going to be all Super Bowl talk. We're going to have a long podcast, I would say, knowing the guest that's going to be coming on. I would say at minimum, this will be 45 minutes, but it's going to be a fun one. There'll be Super Bowl talk, a little bit Tom Brady news, definitely retiring. So we'll get into that conversation next week. There'll be a little bit, kind of everything next week, but yeah, definitely the focus will be on the Super Bowl as we get set for, Eagles, Chiefs, Andy Reid Bowl, Kelsey Bowl. Going to be a good one. Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes. Going to be a good, exciting Super Bowl. So we're going to get into all that next week. See you guys next week.